How's it going, everybody? I just want to provide the second half of this presentation about resumes and cover letters. And I want to focus on the cover letter, and I want to sort of attach some of the lessons from this particular presentation to what I'm seeing in everybody's cover letters. And so I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible, but I want to hit on some of the key things that I think will be important as you work on revising and using the feedback from your peers. So a cover letter is essentially your place to provide a lens for your resume. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of information and data that's presented on a resume. And I think it's important for you to explain to your reader or demonstrate to your reader how they ought to go about reading your resume. So what lens should they bring to it? And so that's sort of the lens through which we're going to look at this. So you need to go into your resume with a clear set of goals. And really there's a few. You should obviously and very pragmatically identify the position you're applying for and where you heard about it. Now that doesn't seem very sexy or imaginative, but it's really important for you to make it very clear what you're applying for and where you heard about it. And the reasons for that are as practical as you would think. At a company like Chimbro or at a major hospital, the human resources department might be hiring any number of positions, sometimes in the hundreds, and you need to make sure that your resume and cover letter end up on the right desk, basically. And so that's really important. And the other thing is you want to explain where you heard about the position, because that's obviously a place where you could share a personal referral, but it also gives the employer really good feedback about what channels of recruitment are working the best. The other thing, obviously, that you want to do early in the letter is sort of lay out the highlight reel of yourself. What are the 3 or 4 really important things the reader needs to know about you? Those could be experiences, those could be skills, those could be trainings, could be education. Sometimes the cover letter, depending on what your work history looks like, could be a place for you to fill in blanks and gaps, to explain things. If you took off time to raise your children, if you experienced an injury, if you were laid off, these could be things that sometimes you want to account for in the cover letter. You also want to demonstrate knowledge of the company. This is something that's been drilled into you in the various other readings that we've done, but I can't express it enough. The same thing is true of your cover letter as with your resume. If you're sending the same generic cover letter to multiple employers, you're fundamentally doing it wrong. You need to demonstrate that you know what the company is, what they do well, who they serve. Any types of what I call tips of the cap will really help you. And then finally, you want to illustrate enthusiasm. And so, I hope that the next 3 or 4 tips will really help you execute these goals. When we talk about demonstrating knowledge, it's not just flattering the company. It's also demonstrating knowledge of the position. So demonstrating that you know what a day in the life of that particular position looks like, that you understand the demands that will be placed on you in that position, that you sort of are attaching and making clear lines of alignment and transferability between what you've done and what you're going to be doing. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to show knowledge of the company, to understand who they serve, what they do well, techniques, tools, equipment that they use, anything like that that shows that you're very forward thinking and that you've done your homework is obviously really helpful. And sometimes you want to show knowledge of the field. Sometimes it's just a matter of demonstrating that you've thought carefully about where your field's going. Sometimes that's new technology that's coming on. Sometimes that's new demands that are coming on. So for instance, in the last few years, we've been talking a lot with medical professionals about digital medical records. So, demonstrating that you understand that presents a unique set of challenges and a new set of skills is going to go a long way in showing the reader that you've really done your homework and that you know what you're getting yourself into. So always keep that in mind, that part of what you're doing in a cover letter is demonstrating knowledge and command of the position. You kind of want to prove to the reader that you know what you're getting yourself into. And I see this in many of your cover letters, but many of you could do a better job with this. Tip number 3, this is something that I think is really important, and it's to use a repeatable structure. So I just got done telling you that it's important for you to send a new cover letter to each unique position. But that can be really, really difficult, because sometimes you hear about a position and you only have a few hours or maybe a day to apply, and you don't want to sit down and reinvent the wheel every time you have to craft a cover letter. So I've devised what I think is a pretty repeatable structure that can be really helpful in making sure that you don't sit there and spin your wheels. And really it's based on a 5 to 6 paragraph letter. And so I'm going to go through that really quickly, and many of you have this, and some of you maybe could learn something from this as you work on revising. We just talked about this, paragraph 1, usually 1 to 2 sentences. What position, where you heard about it. That's it. There's a theory that you want to come out swinging, that you want to make an impact, grab the reader's attention, and that's fine, and that works for some people. But I've seen a great deal of success with having that very practical, almost courteous first paragraph that makes sure that you are giving them the feedback that they need, and that the cover letter is ending up on the desk that it needs to end up on. Paragraph 2, though, is one of the more important paragraphs you will write. It's also really short, sometimes on the order of a sentence or two, but I call it the nutshell paragraph. And what that means is it's your candidacy or your unique profile in a nutshell. So you're kind of answering the question, why you, in a sentence or two. And you can sort of use a formula, and I shared this with you in the feedback to one of your assignments, that you can essentially use the formula, I believe I'm a successful candidate, or I believe I'm a great fit for this position for reasons X, Y, and Z. For those of you who have a background in academic writing, you've taken college comp, or you've taken writing classes in high school, you know what a thesis statement is. Well, a thesis statement is nothing more than how you frame an argument. It's nothing more than a forecasting statement that tells your reader what's coming, and I think the nutshell paragraph does that too. So, it could be, because of my 25 years of experience, my command of both hand and power equipment, and my commitment to safety, I believe I'd be a great fit for your company, or something like that. That's not the greatest example in the world, but it's sort of creating this really powerful 1 to 2 sentence summary of yourself that names who you are, what you're good at, and what you bring to the table. And that should be what you do somewhere early in the letter, because that's going to tell the reader right off the bat who you are and what you're about. Now, paragraphs 3 and 4 are where you illustrate or back up those claims. I've been telling you all along to show, don't tell, and I feel like that is something that all of you could benefit from in revising your cover letters. Any claims that you make about yourself, you need to have support that illustrates that. And I think we can learn a lot from our power of revision exercise in the relatively brief paragraph about the grant proposal, where the writer tells us about this particular project that they worked on. Now, what I love about that is that shows us everything we need to know about that candidate. It shows us communication skills. It shows us writing skills. It shows us organizational skills. It shows us teamwork skills, project management skills. It shows us all those things without having to tell us. And so the gold standard here would be to lay out a series of qualities, credentials, or skills in your nutshell paragraph, and then have an anecdote or two that really illustrates what that's all about in paragraphs 3 and 4. Now, one of the things, I only had one student bring this to my attention, and I wholeheartedly agree, and I was hoping that somebody would bring it up. One of the things that we can be critical about when it comes to our power of revision version number 2 of the cover letter is that it's just kind of long, right? So we want to be making our impact as quickly as possible. And so I encourage you to try to find the most succinct way that you can to demonstrate the things that you've laid out in your nutshell paragraph. And so I'll give you a really great example of this. I had a student a few semesters ago who was working on his cover letter, and most of his experience had been in retail. He'd actually worked at Walmart for several years in customer service, and now he was getting into a trades field. And he was writing in his cover letter that, during his time at Walmart, he had developed a real knack for customer service. Well, that's a claim, right? That's something that anybody could say about themselves, and so the evidence really is the most important part. And instead of going through, a tremendously long and complex set of examples, he wrote one of the best sentences I've ever read, and it said, and I'm paraphrasing essentially, in my time at Walmart, I've done everything from, help people pick out tires for their car, to choose the right ripeness of banana for their cereal, to make decisions about financing and buying a new television. And I think that was a really effective way of sort of showing the spectrum of skill and ability that person has. And so I think that that's something that you should keep in mind, that you don't have to tell your whole life story. You can focus on a project, an experience, an incident, but you want to be really concrete, and I think that's really important. Paragraph 5, very, very basic. You want to thank them for their time reading your cover letter, and you want to give them methods of following up. You want to say, if you have any more questions about my resume, please feel free to contact me anytime at the following phone number or email address. It's very cut and dried. keep it relatively simple and straightforward. And then, obviously somewhere in there, you want to demonstrate your knowledge of the company. Sometimes that's connecting your previous experience in paragraphs 3 and 4 with what you'll be doing in that company. It could be creating a connection between your commitments and their commitments, or your qualities and their qualities, but somewhere in there you want to demonstrate that knowledge. And I think that if you use this kind of template, you can customize it, you can fit it to almost any position, and it will allow you to produce cover letters relatively quickly that are of high quality and a great deal of specificity. Tip number 4, you want to use descriptive words and be precise. Don't be generic and vague. Don't be general and bland. Show us sort of a day in the life that you lived in a previous work experience. The more descriptive you can be, the more concrete you can be, the more credible ultimately you're going to be. And tip number 5 is really straightforward. As with everything else, you need to be resourceful. Have people read your cover letter, see your cover letter through multiple revisions, get feedback on your cover letter, see how it would fly in your particular field or with your particular audience. But I can't stress enough, the key here is that you need to be providing a reader a way to see you. And I think the nut paragraph is essential in that, because it really lays out the terms by which you want to be evaluated. If you say that you're a marketing professional with a commitment towards customer service, that's great, but anybody can say that. You need to prove to us that you are, in fact, both of those things. So you could point to your education, you could point to previous work experiences. Maybe you say that you are a hard worker who has experience in a number of trade positions. Well, you got to prove both of those things to us. So point to projects, point to an average work week. Show us those things, and I think that what you'll find is that your reader is going to be more compelled by that. So anyway, good luck, and I hope to see some of these things reflected in your cover letters.